Summary of The Gun and the Olive Branch. The Roots of Violence in the Middle East by David Hirst. Here is a possible script for the video, based on the web search results and the guide you provided. How much do you know about the history and politics of the Middle East? Do you want to understand the roots of one of the most complex and long-standing conflicts in the world? The Middle East is a region that has been shaped by centuries of wars, invasions, migrations, and cultural exchanges. But it is also a region that has been plagued by violence, oppression, and injustice. One of the most prominent and controversial issues in the Middle East is the conflict between Israel and Palestine, which has been going on for more than 100 years. The book I'm going to summarize for you today is called The Gun and the Olive Branch: The Roots of Violence in the Middle East by David Hirst. It is a non-fiction book that provides a comprehensive and critical history of the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, from its origins in the late 19th century to the present day. The main theme of the book is that the conflict is not inevitable or natural, but rather a result of repeated aggression and injustice by one side against the other. Section 1, The Origins of the Conflict, 1882 to 1920. How did the conflict begin? The conflict began with the emergence of Zionism, a political movement that aimed to create a Jewish homeland in Palestine, which was then part of the Ottoman Empire. Zionism was motivated by religious, nationalist, and colonialist aspirations, as well as by the persecution of Jews in Europe. However, Zionism ignored or disregarded the rights and interests of the native Arab population of Palestine, who had lived there for centuries and had their own culture and identity. The first Zionist settlers arrived in Palestine in 1882 and established agricultural colonies. They bought land from absentee landlords or local elites, often displacing or exploiting the Arab peasants who worked on it. The Zionist movement gained support from Britain and other European powers, who saw it as a way to advance their strategic and economic interests in the region. Britain issued the Balfour Declaration in 1917, which promised to support the establishment of a Jewish national home in Palestine. The Arab population of Palestine resisted Zionism and its foreign backers. They organized protests, boycotts, petitions, and armed resistance. They also appealed to the Ottoman authorities and later to the League of Nations for protection and recognition. This section shows how Zionism was a form of aggression against the Arab people of Palestine, who had a legitimate claim to their land and sovereignty. It also shows how Zionism was supported by foreign powers who had their own agendas in the region. Section 2, The Escalation of Violence, 1921 to 1948. How did the conflict turn violent? The conflict turned violent as Zionism intensified its efforts to establish a Jewish state in Palestine, while Arab nationalism grew stronger and more militant. The British Mandate over Palestine failed to resolve or contain the conflict, but rather exacerbated it by favoring one side over the other. The violence reached its peak during and after World War II, when hundreds of thousands of Jews fled from Nazi persecution to Palestine, while hundreds of thousands of Arabs were expelled or fled from their homes in what became Israel. The violence between Jews and Arabs erupted in several waves of riots, massacres, bombings, assassinations, and guerrilla warfare. Some of the most notorious incidents were the 1929 Hebron massacre, when Arab mobs killed 67 Jews in Hebron. The 1936 to 1939 Arab Revolt, when Arab rebels fought against British forces and Jewish militias. The 1946 King David Hotel bombing, when Jewish militants blew up the British headquarters in Jerusalem, killing 91 people. The 1948 Deir Yassin massacre, when Jewish fighters killed more than 100 Arab villagers near Jerusalem. The British Mandate over Palestine tried to balance between Jewish and Arab demands, but ultimately failed to satisfy either side. The British imposed restrictions on Jewish immigration and land purchase, but also suppressed Arab resistance and political aspirations. The British also proposed several partition plans that would divide Palestine into separate Jewish and Arab states, but none of them were accepted by both parties. The violence reached its climax during and after World War II, when two major events changed the course of the conflict. The Holocaust, which killed 6 million Jews in Europe and increased their desperation and determination to find a safe haven in Palestine. The 1947 UN Partition Plan, which endorsed the creation of a Jewish state and an Arab state in Palestine, with Jerusalem as an international city. The plan was accepted by the Jewish leadership, but rejected by the Arab leadership and neighboring countries. The plan triggered a civil war between Jews and Arabs in Palestine, followed by a war between Israel and the Arab states in 1948. The war resulted in the establishment of Israel, the displacement of more than 700,000 Palestinians, and the occupation of the West Bank and Gaza by Jordan and Egypt. This section shows how the violence between Jews and Arabs escalated as a result of the increasing imbalance of power and resources between them. It also shows how the violence was influenced by external factors, such as the British Mandate, the Holocaust, and the UN Partition Plan. Section 3, The Expansion of Israel, 1949 to 1979. How did Israel become a regional power? Main idea: Israel became a regional power by expanding its territory, strengthening its military, and securing its alliance with the United States. Israel also faced several challenges and threats from its Arab neighbors, who refused to recognize or negotiate with it. Israel fought several wars with the Arab states, which resulted in more territorial gains, more Palestinian refugees, and more international criticism. Israel expanded its territory beyond the borders of the UN Partition Plan by occupying or annexing parts of the West Bank, Gaza, East Jerusalem, Sinai, Golan Heights, and South Lebanon. Israel also established hundreds of settlements in these areas, which violated international law and human rights. Israel strengthened its military by developing a nuclear program, acquiring advanced weapons and technology, and creating a conscription system and a reserve force. Israel also received massive economic and military aid from the United States, which became its main ally and protector. Israel faced several challenges and threats from its Arab neighbors, who formed various coalitions and organizations to oppose it. Some of the most prominent ones were the Arab League, which imposed an economic boycott on Israel and supported Palestinian resistance. The Palestine Liberation Organization, PLO, which was founded in 1964 as an umbrella group for various factions that sought to liberate Palestine from Israeli occupation. The Arab Socialist Ba'ath Party, which ruled Iraq and Syria and advocated for pan-Arabism and socialism. Israel fought several wars with the Arab states, which had different outcomes and consequences. Some of the most significant ones were the 1956 Suez Crisis, when Israel invaded Egypt along with Britain and France to regain control of the Suez Canal. The invasion was condemned by the international community and ended by a UN ceasefire. The 1967 Six-Day War, when Israel preemptively attacked Egypt, Syria, and Jordan after they mobilized their forces along its borders. The war ended with a decisive Israeli victory in the occupation of Sinai, Gaza, West Bank, East Jerusalem, and Golan Heights. The 1973 Yom Kippur War, when Egypt and Syria launched a surprise attack on Israel on the Jewish holy day of Yom Kippur. The war ended with a stalemate and a UN-brokered ceasefire. The 1978 Camp David Accords, when Israel signed a peace treaty with Egypt after secret negotiations mediated by U.S. President Jimmy Carter. The treaty involved Israeli withdrawal from Sinai in exchange for Egyptian recognition of Israel. This section shows how Israel became a dominant force in the region by expanding its territory and military at the expense of the Arab states and people. It also shows how Israel faced resistance and hostility from its neighbors who challenged its legitimacy and security. Section 4, The Quest for Peace, 1080 present. How did the conflict evolve in recent times? The conflict evolved in recent times as new actors emerged on both sides, new issues arose on the ground, and new attempts were made to resolve it peacefully. The conflict also became more globalized and polarized as it attracted more attention and involvement from other countries and groups. The conflict remains unresolved despite several initiatives and agreements that have failed to address its core issues or implement its commitments. New actors emerged on both sides that changed the dynamics of the conflict. Some of them were Hamas, which is an Islamist movement that was founded in 1987 as an offshoot of the Muslim Brotherhood. Hamas opposes Israel's existence and advocates for armed resistance and Islamic rule in Palestine. Hezbollah, which is a Shia militant group that was founded in 1982 as a response to Israel's invasion of Lebanon. Hezbollah fights against Israel's occupation of South Lebanon and supports Iran's regional agenda. Likud, which is a right-wing political party that was founded in 1973 as a coalition of various nationalist and conservative factions. Likud opposes any territorial concessions. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to my channel for more awesome book summaries and reviews.